Hello, welcome back to our channel. This will be the third class in Mystical Awakenings. We're kind of hosting these classes now to bring forth more conscious growth and evolution.
So this third class is on the soul's path, and when I teach it in my living room, it's about 4 hours long, but I'm breaking this class in half, so it won't be quite so long. And we're going to be talking about the soul today, and also in the next class. And today we're going to be talking about who and what the soul is, and how it is a part of us, as well as the maturity levels of the soul. So, Yvette, you've heard of the chakras, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm going to just briefly talk about the chakras and what they are. Most people know about the seven chakras that are in the physical body. Number one is at the tailbone, and it relates to everything related to safety and security. So the chakras, in the first class, I talked about how the spiritual body relates to a body of thought and feeling, right? And the mental body is also a body of thought and feeling, and so forth and so on. Well, the chakras are kind of the same way. The chakras deal with certain concepts or ideas related to that chakra. So chakra number one deals with safety and security and everything you believe about safety and security. So if you're in victim consciousness, you're going to believe all these, you're going to have all these beliefs and concepts and ideas and survival strategies based upon victim consciousness, which is going to create a specific vibration that's going to attract reality. Right? You get that?
Yeah.
Well, if you're in higher consciousness, you're going to think entirely different thoughts. You're going to believe entirely different things. Victim consciousness and higher consciousness have nothing in common. So the first chakra is about your survival, your safety and security and your survival. And if your survival consciousness is based on victim consciousness and how do I defend myself in this crazy world in which we live, you're going to have a certain vibration that affects all the other chakras. Okay, because the first chakra is at the root of everything. And when you shift into higher consciousness, when you're working at shifting, shifting is a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you're shifting into higher consciousness, well, that affects all the other consciousnesses on up. So the first is safety and security. The second is at the genital area, and that is what's called the creative center. So that's where you, all your thoughts and beliefs about creativity are housed right there in that chakra. And of course, it's talking about physical creation, like a man and woman coming together to create a baby, but it's also all kinds of other creative activities like, oh, I think I'll make this great tasting meal or read this wonderful book or whatever. Lazarus also calls it the pleasure center. The third chakra is your solar plexus. And that deals with what Lazarus calls domination and dominion. So in victim consciousness, domination is all about manipulation and deception, which is what's rampant in victim consciousness. And we not only dominate others, we manipulate ourselves into doing certain behaviors and so forth and so on that aren't very loving. If you're in what's called dominion, then the behaviors you have towards others are going to be completely different. You're not going to be dominating them. You're not going to be manipulating them. You're not going to be trying to deceive them about anything. Your strategies about how to live life and be in relationship with others are completely different. And then the fourth chakra is the heart center, which deals with all your issues related to self-love. Your third chakra deals with your issues related to how to love others. Right? But this one is all about self-love, self-forgiveness. And then your throat chakra is everything related to communication and how you communicate with others verbally, but also through art and music and dance and all the ways that we're creative. And then this is the sixth chakra is related to your psychic abilities and your intuition. And it's basically the chakra that opens the mind. And when you're in victim consciousness, your mind is more closed. There's things that you don't want to know about, don't want to hear about. And when you're in higher consciousness, you realize that everything is dependent on knowledge, that knowledge is power, and that if you don't know certain things, you're not going to behave in an appropriate way and or a loving way. And then this way, of course, the seventh chakra is called the doorway to the divine. Under that, so underneath your feet is the eighth chakra. And the eighth chakra is the chakra that creates your auric field, the field of energy that is around us that is invisible to most people. Some people can see it, and there's a certain kind of photography that you can use called Kirlian photography, in which you can take a picture of your aura. Have you ever done that?
No, I haven't. That sounds interesting. I think I've heard of it before, but I've never.
Yeah, I've had it done.
Oh, wow.
It's really fun and interesting. And I was at a fair one time, and there was a booth where someone was taking these pictures.
Wow.
And then above the eighth chakra is your up here is 9, 10, 11, and 12. So you've got 3 more chakras, actually 4 more chakras above you. And your ninth chakra is the chakra of your real or authentic self. So it's the self that you evolve into as you do your spiritual journey. It's the self that you become as you become more loving and more forgiving, and you're more understanding of the complexities of the physical plane, and all of these kinds of things. When you go on a spiritual journey, you're thinking about your behavior a lot and what motivates my behavior, and is it loving? So when you evolve into your real self, you're someone who is really thinking about this a lot. And boy, I was a real jerk there, and I'm being judgmental, and you're calling yourself out, basically. And then above that is the chakra of your higher self. Above that is the chakra of your soul. So that's your higher self is the 10th chakra. Your soul is your 11th chakra, and your the 12th chakra is the chakra of your God self. So you can never, ever, ever be separated from God. Never. You're connected always to God through your chakra system. The only way you can separate yourself from God is through your belief system. That is the only way. And if you believe that there's no such thing as a God, well, you're instantly cut off, right? Yeah. If you believe that God never talks to me, or that God doesn't care about me, or there may be a God that he doesn't affect my life anyway, you're instantly cut off, right? And all these things in victim consciousness that will cut you off from your 4 higher chakras. So in order to get to your higher self, you have to go through your real self, right? You have to you're wanting to become authentic. You're wanting to become real. You're wanting to be honest, brutally honest with yourself, and tactfully honest to the best of your ability with other people. You're wanting to become more loving. This is when you say things like, I'm sorry I said those things. I really spoke out of turn. You're doing those kinds of things. Well, in order to get to your higher self, you've got to be there. Yeah. And you've got to be in your real self. You've got to be honest. You've got to be authentic. You've got to say, higher self, I really screwed up. I really went into my negative scripts, and I really need to change this behavior. Help me figure out how to change this behavior.
Yeah, it takes a lot of self-awareness.
Exactly. And if you don't have that self-awareness, there's no communication with your higher self. Yeah. So I like to think of your higher self as like a physics professor, and most people in victim consciousness are like kindergartners, right? And if you have a conversation, if you're a kindergartner having a conversation with your with a physics professor, well, what kinds of things can that physics professor get through to you?
Not much.
Not much, because you're not.
Yeah, there's no level of understanding.
There's no level of understanding, exactly. And that's one reason why people will think, well, if there's a God, God doesn't care about me, because they are not open enough to receive that kind of wisdom, because they're not ready to handle it.
Yeah.
So So the purpose of the spiritual journey, of course, is to become that authentic self, to understand how you're creating your reality, everything about victim consciousness. By the time these classes are over, you'll know everything there is to know
Mhm.
about victim consciousness. And if you're doing that self-awareness thing, you'll be aware of, oh, I'm doing that thing again. Do I really want to be doing that thing? Can I rethink this?
Mm.
So that's the process by which you move over into higher consciousness. And you'll simultaneously be learning about this is what it means to be in higher consciousness, and how can I align my vibration with this higher way
Mm.
of thinking. So it's a process, right? And and it takes a long time to rewire the brain, and you're constantly falling off the wagon, so to speak, and
Yeah.
having to
Yeah.
rethink
Realign
your,
yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
realign yourself, rethink yourself. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm.
As you evolve, you develop a more and more authentic communication with your higher self. And how it happened with me is I went to this very evolved spiritual teacher named Lazarus, who was teaching me most of the information that I'm giving you here. Not all of it, but it's definitely woven all through the information that I give. And he was helping us to evolve. Just having the information helps you evolve,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's important to have the information,
Yeah.
but he was also guiding us through guided visualization to help us get in touch with our traumas and help us to release that pain and suffering. And the healing comes in the meditative work that you're doing with your soul.
Mm.
So above your higher self is your soul, and the soul is a feminine energy. Your higher self is more of a masculine energy, and you can think of them as the divine feminine and the divine masculine if you want. And the higher self is your guide to authentic living. Your higher self is knows how to do all this stuff, right?
Mm.
It's the type of energy that is able to figure things out and help you understand how to figure things out. And my experience in my prayer life is that my inner guidance never tells me anything.
Mm.
However, by having the conversation, I kind of open up a doorway that allows more information to come through. And so what my inner guidance does is it helps me to evolve myself into the answer.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the way they're helping at this invisible level is that they are sending you to, well, they sent me to the Course in Miracles. They sent me to Lazarus. All the significant books and the significant people and videos I've watched in my life. Well, how did I get there?
Yeah.
Right? They're orchestrating all that at some invisible level that you and I can't possibly understand at our level of consciousness.
Right.
But somehow they're orchestrating all that. And when you're talking to them, Lazarus says there's power in the conversation. So even though it seems like you're making it up, they're there. They can't not be there
Yeah.
because they're part of your chakra system, right? And
Yeah.
you're on a spiritual journey, which means you've got their attention. You're asking them, I want to evolve. I want to become the best me I know how to be. I want to get rid of this unforgiveness I have or these grievances that I carry. And I don't know how. I can say the words, but nothing ever changes. I still feel this pain in my heart or whatever.
Yeah.
So when you begin working with your soul is that part of you, the feminine energy part. So think about the mommy, the
Mm.
mother. What does the mother do?
She nurtures, takes care of.
She kisses away all your owies. She tells you everybody makes mistakes.
Mm.
She tells you you're lovable anyway if you have a good mother.
Yeah.
Now, lots of mothers aren't good. If you're in victim consciousness and haven't healed your traumas, you may not be a good mom. You may be inflicting pain.
Mm.
But that's kind of the archetype of the good mother, the nurturer, the compassionate one, the caring one.
Mm.
And the soul doesn't exist on her own. She's kind of in partnership with the higher self, obviously.
Mhm.
And but in order to get to her authentic love, that deeply nurturing love that just opens you up and turns you inside out and allows you to know that there is really something there.
Mm.
who's really able to help you make those changes energetically in your body.
Yeah.
Um, you have to go through your higher self, first becoming authentic, then communicating with your higher self. And your higher self is teaching you how. This is how you do all those things. I'm kind of acting as a lot of people's higher self right now as I pass along this information that I've learned on my spiritual journey. And that's the way it is here on the physical plane. Until you're able to connect authentically on your own, then you're dependent
Mm.
on wise teachers and guides that are physical
Yeah.
here. And I'm not the be all and the end all. There is no be all and the end all. You'll come to me for a little while to garner my information and take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. And then you'll find another teacher, another book, or you listen to a lot of videos. And that's the way it's supposed to be,
Hmm.
right? If you just limit yourself to one path, that could be a problem
Right.
because all paths at a certain level are polluted.
Mm.
They're polluted by the human ego.
Yeah. And I
And
feel like you need multiple paths to evolve. If you go down one path in your life, I mean, you need to experience multiple things in your life. If you're only experiencing one thing and if you only limit yourself to one thing, then that's where your growth stops. And that's where
yes,
you can't go further than your limitation.
you're exactly right. It's very important because, my two main teachers were the Course in Miracles, written in all Christian terminology, written with all male pronouns, took me down one path, which I thought was exquisitely beautiful. But then I began working with Lazarus, and I was clearly guided to both.
Mm-hmm.
And I clearly resonated with the Course in Miracles. It just completely changed my life. And then when I was working with Lazarus, all he talked about was the goddess,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
the soul,
Yeah.
the divine feminine. And he also connected us with our higher selves, definitely. But the gist of his teaching, it had a much wider scope because he was teaching like this whole quantum physics version of reality creation and how we're literally creating it all at the level of subatomic particles that the Course in Miracles never talked about,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And teaching us. The Course in Miracles talked a lot about forgiveness, but he was teaching us the meditative work to do,
Mm-hmm.
to heal ourselves and, that talking about the human experience and all aspects of that experience and how we might go about healing ourselves, because we're all so different. So Lazarus filled in all these blanks that the Course in Miracles didn't even talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important that I do them both together. And now I'm really into the whole ET connection and what's happened at a global level to the Earth for thousands of years, which is a whole nother level of creation that I knew nothing about,
Yeah.
when I was doing the Course in Miracles. So, and I'm also into health and kind of out of the box thinkers when it comes to how to heal the body. Well,
Mm.
that's a whole nother journey,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And if I just stuck to one, I would missed out on all these others.
Yeah. It's like there's a ladder, you got to climb the ladder. You can't stay at one step for the rest of your life. And
Right.
I kind of resonate with that, probably not in the way you do, because, you've done this over a span of, 40 years, 30, 40 years. But I kind of noticed that in small parts, like before I started working with you, I believe I started in January. I didn't really know everything that we talk about. I had a like an unconscious knowledge of, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't brought forth to the surface because I did not have a teacher to tell me that, oh yes, you are correct about that, or no, it's more like this. So, and everything that I've thought, everything that I've went through in my life, everything has brought me to that point. Even if it's a painful experience, it's brought me to wanting to heal myself. If I didn't go through any problem in my life, I would never have sought out somebody to help me heal, or
Right. Mm-hmm.
healing methods, or different ways to take control of my life, because it would have been fine.
Right. And you're bringing up another important point, Yvette, and that is that you're an old soul, which is I'm going to be talking about in this particular class right here. But as an old soul, you've learned all of this stuff before.
Hmm.
So I am just triggering your own memories.
Hmm.
That's all I'm doing. And if you weren't an old soul, you wouldn't be attracted to this.
Right. Yeah, there'd be no understanding.
There would be no resonance, no vibration, no attraction.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've already worked your way up to this level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just reminding you, that's all I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like you said, if I didn't go through all that, in a past life or in all those lifetimes, I would never have been at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So when you go on a spiritual journey, you've decided to evolve spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, because we can get sick at all those levels, right?
Yeah.
You've decided to explore love. Most of us have had many failed relationships.
Mhm.
And you get to a point, it's like, why did they fail?
Yeah.
Right? I want to understand what love is and how to do it. I know what enabling is. I've done that in plenty of relationships,
Mhm.
right? But how do you actually do this thing called love? And how do I heal my belief system, the mental aspects? How do I heal emotionally? Because just because you know something doesn't mean you feel good about it.
Yeah.
It's a process, that whole thing. Um, and so on the spiritual journey, you learn about this thing called the soul's path.
Mhm.
And according to Lazarus, this information has been known, was known in Lemuria, was known in Atlantis. It has been known for many, many, many hundreds of years. But we live in a time in history when we have been completely separated from any true form of spirituality.
Yeah.
We have religions,
Mhm.
and religions can be good, but usually they're a mixed bag. They're
Mhm.
mixed up with ancient truths and a lot of ego stuff,
Mhm.
manipulation and control, and a lot of erroneous beliefs
Mhm.
about God and the nature of reality. But when you're a younger soul, you don't know that. You just fall in line with whatever those teachers are wanting you to believe.
Yeah.
Um,
And growing up in a Christian church too, um, I always thought, why was it so hard for me to connect with God? If I'm going to church every week, if I'm going to church, either once or twice a week, why is it so hard for me to connect to God? Why isn't my church teaching me how to connect with God on a personal level? And now that I'm doing all this internal work and I'm actually working with the God that I believe in and not a traditional Christian God, because it's hard. It's hard having a personal relationship with God because it takes consistency. It takes controlling your own personal thoughts and beliefs, and no one's going to want to sit through that in church every week, and no
mhm,
one's going to want to sit through somebody telling them that, oh, you need to work on yourself in order to connect to a higher power.
mhm.
And it's just, I feel like a lot of people would be so much more helped if church was like actually teaching you how to connect with God on a personal level, not just telling you stories about God that are from the Bible or personal experiences or anything,
Mhm.
like a structured. I know in Catholicism it's very structured.
Right.
There's no room for. I mean, you can't even pray to God without a person there.
Right. Without being praying through the prayer manual, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, Catholicism is really, really probably the oldest Christian
Hmm.
religion. And, it was created as a political tool
Hmm.
to take control over the masses. And they couldn't have people go talking to God on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I believe it was
It
created
was-
in Rome when people from, Jerusalem or back in the Middle East where the Bible was originated, it was
Mhm.
brought over by disciples to Rome. And it says in the Bible too, and they murdered the Romans. I think they murdered all the disciples and was like, oh, we can use that religion to control
Yeah.
the citizens. And
Then
that's
they
how it became
figured
a
it out.
religion.
Right. That's how it all came about. And if we control the people and control what they believe, then we can manipulate them in any way that we desire and teach them that God is evil and cruel. And if you don't do exactly what we tell you, you're going to be cast in the fiery pit.
Right.
That's a great manipulator.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It keeps people in fear.
yeah, it keeps people in fear. Plus, that's not what love is. It has
Yeah.
nothing whatsoever to do with God is love. It has nothing whatsoever
Yeah.
to do with love.
Yeah, not at all.
And, being physical is a method of evolution, and it takes us lifetimes to figure this out. And the reason why is because um, this is the physical plane, the earth, maybe not all physical planes, but the earth vibrates to victim consciousness.
Hmm.
Even our religions vibrate to victim consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to outgrow that
Mm.
if you don't have somebody around you when you're a child and growing up telling you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and once you get onto this path, you can evolve very, very quickly.
Yeah, much more. I think you can evolve much more from, I mean, that's why I started reading the Bible in the first place, because I felt like I was getting nowhere going to church. They weren't teaching me who God actually is. And,
Hmm.
some things in the Bible also, it says like, oh, you're supposed to pay your taxes. And it's like, but then there's a story about Jesus creating money out of thin air. He doesn't care about
Right.
the
Uh-huh.
what money is, that's
Uh-huh.
man-made. He didn't approve of that. Like, you
Right.
know,
There's a lot of things that don't make sense to me in the Old Testament, that it's
mm,
just like
yeah. I mean,
God telling somebody to kill their son. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's
I don't get
stories
it.
of girls raping their dad. There's stories of, and it's like, that's in the Bible. Like,
Yeah, there's a lot about the Bible I don't understand, but I do have to say I do attend church, and what I want to say to people is don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There's a lot of beautiful concepts and ideas in Christianity, and
mhm,
as long as you keep in mind that it's also a religion made by human ego,
mhm,
I mean, that's part of maturing, right? Is you have to be able to separate the lies from the truth
right.
in everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even in what I'm saying, because I don't have all the answers.
Right.
I'm giving you if I'm giving you spirituality as I understand it to be, as a
Mhm.
result of 30 years of my spiritual experience.
Yeah. And with
Um,
religion, there's no way to prove that it's the truth or it's fake. There's no way. It's just whatever resonates with you. An atheist is going to believe that it's completely fake, but a devoted Christian is going to be like, no, this is the truth. There's no other way
mhm,
to think about it. So
right.
it's very opinionated. It's based on what you believe and
Oh,
no
and
one else.
it's all going to has to do with your maturity level, believe it or
Yeah.
not, which I'm going to talk about. Um, yeah. So it's how conscious you are
Hmm.
when you begin to study that faith or that religion or that form of spirituality. When you're conscious, you can separate the truth from the lies, and you take what resonates with you and leave the rest behind. And you don't feel guilty about it, even if someone in that religion is trying to make you feel guilty.
Yeah, and it's just I've had personal experiences too in the church where, I mean, I've had like pastors' wives talking bad about people and gossiping and, not displaying what is actual Christianity. And it that just also made me think, like, how can you go to church every day and how can you think this way if you're sitting there gossiping about what that person's wearing, or you're just full of judgment and you're full of hatred? It's like, how can you call yourself a Christian?
Well,
You
that's
know?
right, because they're not doing the self-observation work
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
need to do. And, Christianity has murdered millions of
Mhm.
people. I mean, all the native people, they took the children away from the Native Americans in Canada and America and put them in schools where they basically abused them. And, in Australia was another place, and the Crusades. They went into the Middle East and killed thousands of people in the name of Jesus, and they burned all these women during the burning times, and that was all done in the name of the Christian God,
Yeah.
which is insane.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with God.
That has nothing to do with God. But at the level that people were then,
Hmm.
it seemed to make sense to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the consciousness level that people were then, it seemed to make sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about maturity level. And I believe that maturity is based on time and experience, right? We have experiences, we make mistakes, we learn from our mistakes, we correct our behavior, we try it again, make more mistakes,
Mm.
and so on and so forth. And we do that over thousands of lifetimes. I believe in past lives. I believe that there's no way to figure all this out in one lifetime. It's impossible
Yeah.
because the maturity level of the soul goes along with the with human maturity level. So you think of as a young soul is like a child,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
children, they believe the most outlandish things.
Mm.
They don't see a bigger picture about anything. Uh, the younger the child, the more self-centered they are.
Mhm.
And they think it's all about me and my needs. They can't see a bigger picture. They haven't had enough life experience to become wise.
Mm.
Um, and so they need to be constantly watched by their parents or by an older sibling because they'll just do stupid things
Mhm.
because they don't know any better. So let's talk about what the maturity level looks like. So the maturation of the soul roughly follows that of human maturation. So if you incarnate as a young soul, you'll stay a young soul for the entire lifetime.
Mm.
If you incarnate as an adolescent soul, you will stay an adolescent soul the entire lifetime, or as a mature soul. So I break the levels of the soul into the child, the adolescent, the young adult, the adult soul or the mature soul, and then the old soul.
Mm.
And if you were an old soul and you incarnate into a physical body, you still make all the same mistakes a child soul makes.
Mhm.
You still make all the same mistakes an adolescent soul makes. You make the mistakes of a young adult soul and a mature soul, but eventually you will evolve into the maturity level that you actually are.
Mm.
I've told you before, I didn't awaken to God until I was 37, 38 years old.
Yeah.
And until that time, I was depressed all the time. The world made no sense to me. I was deep into depression and pain and suffering, and hadn't been able to release my grievances or the pain of my trauma in my childhood. And there was nothing that was going to heal me of that.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
wasn't until I awakened to God and went through my spiritual journey and began to understand who I am and how to heal my traumas of my past that
Mm.
I was able to begin to heal. And of course, I created this divine relationship with my higher guidance, and which was completely 100% nurturing.
Mhm.
And I was living a life that nothing around me nurtured me.
Yeah.
So to me, that nurturing was everything.
Yeah.
Plus, I was learning from the Course in Miracles, and I was learning from Lazarus, and I was doing all these amazing things and having all these amazing experiences with my inner guidance, and my whole world changed.
Yeah.
My entire world changed
Yeah.
entirely.
Now that's amazing how
Mhm.
one thing can just domino effect into a whole different perspective.
Yes, exactly. So let's go back to the young soul. Um, so just like a young soul who hits his siblings when he's angry, won't share his toys, throws tantrums, keeps all the goodies for himself, does mean things to their siblings just because they feel like it. Well, a young soul is like that. There are people in the world who are adults, a lot of them the leaders of countries,
Mm.
a lot of them the dictators of countries, who
Mm.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Hitler comes along and says, I'm going to take all your resources. I don't care how you feel about it. I'm going to kill anyone that I don't like. You know,
Mhm.
I'm going to make up stories about them and tell lies. The Jews are dirty. They're this, that, and the other. They're causing everybody's poverty. And everyone who's a younger soul says, yeah, that's right. Because they're in victim consciousness. Now we've got a scapegoat. Now we've got somebody to blame.
Yeah.
Right? But the older souls didn't fall for that. Like,
Mhm.
what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
But you couldn't speak out because then you'd get killed,
Mhm.
right? Well, that's the definition of a young soul.
Yeah. I know that always amazes me how it was just he just got away with it. So many people were just yeah.
Well, Yeah, it's happening again right now. It's that we're being fed a pack of lies, and that if you can't see through the lies, you won't do the research to find the truth.
Right.
And that's what happened in Nazi Germany. There was a lot of people at that soul level that the majority of the people were. They couldn't see through those lies.
Mm. Yeah.
And they believed them, and they found their scapegoat. And, I'm in victim consciousness. Now I find a scapegoat, and I'm being told I can kill that scapegoat or do mean and rotten things to them. It's like, okay, goody, goody.
Hmm.
That's that goes into the negative script we were talking about last week, the dark matrix of limitation and pain. I can do all those things and not feel guilty about it because I'm being told by an authority figure that that's okay
Hmm. Yeah.
when it's not okay.
Yeah.
Um, so soul age has nothing to do with intelligence. You can find people who, I mean, Hitler had to have been really intelligent to figure out how to get
Hmm.
all those people to follow him.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard he was actually a really good public speaker, and
Yeah.
he was educated. I think he was an artist too. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very charismatic.
Hmm.
And so he got a bunch of people to follow them, and he was really crafty how he figured out how to do everything and the kinds of things that he needed to say to people to manipulate them to believe certain things. And then he took control of all the children and put them in special schools to teach them his ideology. And, you know, and he made it so people couldn't refuse, because if you refused, you'd die.
Right.
So he was very smart, and he had a bunch of counselors and helpers that were helping him figure out how to do all this stuff. So there was nothing stupid about Hitler, but spiritually, a young soul,
Yeah.
a very young soul, probably in the realm of a psychopath.
Hmm.
So in our world, the soul level goes from psychopath, which is the most spiritually immature, to saint.
Hmm.
Right? And you think of Jesus as being the epitome of right thinking and right behaving and
Hmm.
unconditionally loving and nurturing and so forth and so psychopath over here to saint and everything in between. And I think that nobody told me this. This is just my idea, but I think it's a bell curve. So you know how a bell curve goes like this, you know, and over here there's the youngest souls, which is relatively small amount, and then the curve goes up, and then you've got kind of the mature souls, which are kind of in this middle realm, and there's going to be more of them, and then it goes down, then goes down here
Yeah.
to the most mature souls, the older souls, and you're going to have less of the youngest souls and less of the oldest souls, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And most people are going to fall somewhere in the middle.
Mm.
So an immature soul or a child soul is lacking in self-control. So if you think about a 2 or 3 year old child, they have no self-control at all. They want to throw a tantrum. They just throw a tantrum, screaming and kicking in the grocery store or wherever you at. They don't care how obnoxious it is or how it inconveniences people.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
louder, the better, Or if they just want to take their siblings, I say brother because I've got two grandkids. They are 4 and 5, so I'm always watching them, do
Yeah.
their negative scripts. It's like, oh, I just think I'll hit that, my brother on the head and take his toys,
Hmm.
and no remorse. They don't even have an understanding of that
Yeah.
yet. No impulse control. They live only in the now. They don't think about future consequences,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They
Not at
don't
all.
think, oh, I'm going to get in trouble if I do that, or my brother's going to turn on me and beat me up. They don't think about those things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a young soul is. They do foolish things, and they don't think about the consequences, and they don't have impulse control. And I'm just going to go take drugs or drink all weekend or eat these donuts 24 hours a day for a week and see how I like it. And
Yeah.
I don't think about the pounds I'm going to put on, or what's going to happen to my relationships if I drink all the time. They don't think
Yeah.
about the consequences.
Yeah.
And an older soul is always thinking about the consequences, right? It's like, well, if I do X, Y, and Z, I know exactly what's going to happen. I think that I will limit my impulses.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's an aspect of soul level.
Hmm.
And here's the thing, and this is kind of a mind-blowing idea. You don't blame a child for being a child, right? You
Mm.
don't expect better of them.
Yeah.
But we do blame child souls for being child souls.
Mm.
We do judge them,
Yeah.
and you can't really judge them.
Yeah.
And that's where the phrase, everyone's doing the best they can with the consciousness that they've got. If they could do better, they would do better.
Yeah.
But a young soul can't do any better than being a young soul.
Yeah. And it's just the path that they have to go on. And, in this life will be a learning experience that they'll take with them in the next life.
Yeah,
It just, this is what they have to go through.
right. And even though they may have forgotten the last lifetime, they bring that information with them at the level of the unconscious.
Mhm.
So alcoholism is a good example of something that takes many, many, many lifetimes to overcome,
Mhm.
because alcoholism is so prevalent. Alcohol is socially acceptable. You can find it anywhere. There's in many of our lifetimes, children were given alcohol at a very young age because it was understood that the water was, toxic. Because
Yeah.
if you don't boil it, you could get sick from the water.
Yeah.
And also, it was an anesthetic. It was the only anesthetic that we had. So
Hmm.
if you were in pain, you drank alcohol. So alcohol has been a problem for humanity since humanity's been around. And so you become alcoholic, and it changes the way your liver functions, but it also deteriorates the brain. And the more alcohol, the more you drink, the worse it becomes, and so forth and so on. Well, you eventually get to that lifetime in which you will start to drink alcohol, maybe drink it, for a few years in high school, and then it's like, no.
Hmm.
You'll get to that lifetime in which you say no immediately. No,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. I can see exactly where that's going to lead. And
Hmm.
you have no desire. You get to a point where you have no desire.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then you've learned that lesson. You don't have to come back again to learn it, because you're never going to be attracted to alcohol again.
Yeah.
And we bring that information with us at the level of the unconscious. In order for us to focus on the lessons that we need to learn in this lifetime, we have to wipe our minds. We have to forget
Yeah.
everything we've done in the past. Otherwise, we'd be thinking about that stuff all the time.
Yeah. It'd be distracting.
Hmm. Let's talk about a psychopath for a minute. Um, Psychopaths are self-centered. They think it's all about me, all about my wants and needs, just like a young soul.
Mm.
Um, they also have done a lot of studies on psychopaths and understand that their brains are wired differently
Hmm.
than our brains. And they estimate that about 6% of the world are born psychopaths.
Mm.
And because psychopaths are liars and deceivers, and they're highly manipulative, they don't have any conscience, they never feel remorse, they gravitate towards positions of power.
Hmm.
So that's why there are so many psychopaths in global leadership.
Hmm.
If you don't understand how to evaluate a person to see if they're a psychopath, you don't know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like all those people in Germany, they didn't know.
Hmm.
They pretended like
Yeah.
he was a great leader.
Yeah.
The other way that you become a psychopath is by being horribly abused
Mm. Yeah.
in childhood, and to the horribly abused to the point that you the soul you came in, no longer really exists.
Hmm.
You're just doing what you're told, believing what you're told to believe,
Hmm.
behaving in a way that is consistent with your upbringing.
Hmm.
And that's the other way you become a psychopath. Let's go on now to the adolescent soul. And whereas the child soul is self-centered, which means they think everything revolves around me, and I don't understand why mom isn't here right now feeding me or doing whatever I want her to do,
Mhm.
because they can't see a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Um, the adolescent is now seeing a little bit bigger picture. They know that everything doesn't know revolve around me, because if I have siblings, they're telling me that all the time, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
No, it revolves around me.
Yeah.
um, but they are self-important,
Mhm.
and their self-importance is, um, even though other people have wants, needs, and desires, mine are still more important than anybody else's.
Mhm. Yeah. So they're aware of it, they just don't care.
Well, it's not that they don't care. They're at this level of consciousness where they still think that their desires and needs are more important. So, an example would be, say there's an item that an adolescent wants the parent to buy.
Mm,
Say it's a pair of jeans or something, a designer jeans that cost like $50, $100.
mm,
And the mom says, I'm not buying you that. Here, buy this generic brand. They're just as good.
mm.
And the adolescent just falls apart,
Yeah.
right? Because no, I want this brand. And
Yeah.
they don't care anything about their mom's pocketbook.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
don't care because they've never had to work to make a living. So again, they haven't evolved to seeing the higher picture, right? They don't think anything about spending their mom's money on something that's worthless,
Mm. Yeah. Wow, that's
ultimately.
something my mom used to tell me too, that kind of brings up, in childhood whenever she told me, like, whenever I would, want something really bad, we'd be at a store and I was little and I wanted something and she told me no, I would just be like, "Okay." I wouldn't make a big deal. I'd just be like, "Okay, I won't get it." You know,
Mhm,
I wouldn't cry and say, "I want it, I want it."
mhm. How about when you were an adolescent?
No,
No,
I would just be like, "Okay, well, then let me get a job when I turn 16 and buy it
buy
myself."
it myself.
Yeah.
That's a sign of an older soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of adolescents won't do that. They will have this raging, screaming
Yeah.
fight with their parents about something they want and make their parent miserable, because, no parent enjoys that kind of behavior, that kind of interaction. And then they'll ask their parent to take them to the mall. It's
Mm.
like,
Yeah, it's
what
like, I am not
is
doing this.
that for you? I
Yeah.
hate you right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard. No one wants to go through that.
Right. But do you see what I mean? They can't see a bigger picture.
Yeah. They just see, "Oh, I
Stuck
want
in
it,
their
and why can't I have it?"
they're stuck in their own little picture of reality,
Mhm.
and they can't help it. They're supposed to be there.
Mhm. Yeah. That's
And
true.
again, you can't judge an adolescent child or an adolescent soul for
Mm.
being that age.
Yeah.
They just are what they are. But an adolescent soul creates no end of chaos around themselves. So adolescent souls do mean things to each other. They're cruel and vile. They often haven't developed their character, and they often don't have any morals. And if you want to know what adolescent souls look like, just watch any soap opera.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, very dramatic.
Very dramatic, very unconscious,
Mm.
often mean spirited. Um, Doing things to each other, having sex with each other's boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing things that are really an adult soul would never do,
Mhm.
because they don't know any better. They think that's the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
So adolescent souls also have black and white thinking. So
Mhm.
we live in a world where there's 1,000 shades of gray, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, nothing is either right or wrong. It all depends upon the circumstances. But adolescent souls tend to put people in groups, like all men are this way, they're all jerks, or all women are this way, they're all witches.
Mhm.
All blacks are this way, all whites are this way, all, whatever. So that is black and white thinking, and that is the thinking of an adolescent soul.
Mhm.
instead of realizing, well, there are men that are jerks, there's women that are jerks, there's men that are great, there's women that are great. You can't put anybody into a, pinhole. You
Yeah.
can't do that.
Yeah.
That's erroneous thinking.
Mhm.
Um, they also, when a child is little, they don't understand anything about symbolism. They
Mhm.
don't understand that one thing can actually mean another,
Mhm.
depending upon how it's used and what the symbolic significance of it is. And it's in adolescence, the early part of adolescence, that you're beginning to figure out that things aren't always as they seem, that one thing can learn that can mean many different things. Like when I was an elementary school teacher, I taught K through 5 in a one-room class. And it was around fourth and fifth grade. I had a little library in my room. And around fourth or fifth grade, that the kids would start checking out the joke books.
Mm.
And they'd think that jokes like what's black and white and red all over is hysterically funny
Mhm.
because they refigured red and red. They
Mhm.
mean
Yeah.
two totally different things. And
Yeah.
it's like their eyes are opened to a
Mhm.
whole new way of thinking and using words and, all of that kinds of things. So adolescents are just beginning to think symbolically and understand these deeper meanings of things.
Mm.
So the next soul level is called the young adult soul. Okay, so the young adult would be analogous with a human that is just leaving adolescence, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Right in that age, probably to actually the end of the 20s. The young adult soul. So what happens when you get out of high school is we develop a strategy for how we're going to define success in our lives and how we're going to get to that success.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of different strategies that you can develop. And uh, you'll stick to that strategy until you figure out it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Usually happens in your 30s. Okay, so I know what I'm going to do to be successful. I'm going to find Prince or Princess Charming. And
Mm.
he's going to take care of me, or she's going to take care of me. And we're going to depend on each other and live happily ever after.
Mm.
You know that one?
Yeah, I've seen it in his life and probably others.
Right.
Yeah.
A strategy. So that's a strategy. I'm looking, we got our binoculars on. Where's Mr. Charming?
Yeah. Yeah, like, that's my life purpose, that's what I'm meant to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very common one. The
Mhm.
other one that I was given as an adolescent was if I go to school and get a degree,
Mhm.
then I'll get a good job and I'll never have to worry about my finances again.
Yeah, that's the one that I've been put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've been given that message over and over, right?
Right, yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And do you know that very few people who have a college degree ever get jobs in what their degree is in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting in today's society, that's becoming less true than ever.
Mhm.
But if that's your survival strategy, if that's what you've been taught to believe, and you think that that is what will make you happy, well, that's what you do, even though you might be miserable in college.
Yeah.
You go for that, and then you can do like I did. I've got several degrees because none of the first ones satisfied me, so
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
kept going back to school and getting another degree and another degree.
Yeah.
And none of them ever worked very well.
Yeah, I don't think school really teaches you. You go to a job that, you went to school for, and the job is nothing like school. I feel like the job is
Mhm,
never, you're not going to go to school to be a surgeon and then perform a surgery the next day you graduate. You're not going
mhm,
to know what the heck you're doing.
right. No, that requires years and years of internship
Yeah.
in which they deprive you of sleep for like
Right.
4 years or something, which is
Yeah.
like insane. Everything that you do in your internship is not healthy. And you're
Right.
trying to become a health practitioner. It's like, huh?
Yeah. It makes no
Oh,
sense. Yeah.
anyway, so here's another one. This is not to put Christians down, but in the fundamentalist Christian society, who believe that the Bible is the one and only Word of God, and that everything in it must be followed in order to receive salvation. So you are going to spend your life studying that Bible, learning all the things that you need to do to experience salvation. And when somebody else tries to talk to you about the Bible and, you know, the fact that lots of different people wrote it and things have been taken out of it, and you know, it's got all these weird beliefs in it that don't seem to make any sense, they can't hear that.
Yeah. They think that, oh, you're gonna go to hell for doubting the word of God. And
Exactly. They cannot hear that. It's like they're in that tunnel vision again. It's got to be this one way. That's that one right way thinking.
yeah.
And uh and I'm sure it's that way in other religions too. It's not just Christianity. I pick on that one because that's the only one I really have a lot of experience with. Um so another example, and lots of people are given this: if I follow the doctor's orders, then I'll be healthy.
Yeah.
If I take all those drugs the doctor tells me to, then I'll be healthy. The doctor cares. Do what the doctor tells you to do.
Yeah.
Right? I know so many people
Yeah.
that swallowed that hook, line, and sinker. And because they swallowed it hook, line, and sinker, you know, if you try to tell them those drugs are toxic, they're going to make you sicker, they cannot hear that. Or maybe you need to eat a better diet and get some exercise. And well, the doctors don't tell me that.
Yeah.
So that is another survival strategy that many of us swallowed. So those are examples of the young adult soul. So now we're moving into the mature soul, and the mature soul has become disillusioned with their survival strategy because guess what? It didn't work. They may have found Mr. and Mrs. Charming, but you know, now I'm divorced. You know, now I'm single with 3 kids and a mortgage payment, and I'm impoverished, right? Yeah. Or maybe I'm having to give my entire paycheck to my wife because you know I have to pay child support, right? So you're gotten disillusions, or you've gotten all this education and you can't find a job in it, you know, or where you live, they don't pay anything or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so you're disillusioned with that, or you've gone the whole Christian route and that for some reason that didn't suit you. I've seen whole churches fall apart, you know, because, you know, they were not living according to their ideals. And you can't blame them because nobody teaches people how to do the inner work to heal yourself. Not really. But anyway, so I've had many people that have come to me that call themselves recovering Christians or recovering Catholics or, you know, what have you. And so I go through my whole spiel about don't throw away the baby with the bathwater, because there's a lot of good stuff in that. But you have to take what is good and what resonates with you, and then continue to do your research, continue to do your exploration. And that's what a mature soul does. They become eclectic in their approach to life. Well, I'm going to take what I like and leave the rest. And I'm not going to let any one person be the authority figure over me. I'm not going to let my doctor be the authority figure, not my priest to be the authority figure, not my husband or my wife. I have to figure this out on my own. And at that level, if you're truly a mature soul, you know, if you're only an adolescent soul, you won't go any farther than your adolescent point of view. But if you're truly a mature soul, you will eventually evolve into this way of thinking. And my experience is that only mature souls are interested in my classes. Because my classes are out of the mainstream. They're out of what is accepted beliefs. And so in order to watch these classes and get something out of it, You have to be open-minded to receive new information. And people who aren't open-minded can't do that.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to receive that information.
That's right. You have to be able to listen with an open mind
Mhm.
and really process it and really think about it
Mhm.
and let it change the way you think about the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't, if you're an immature soul, you will not do that. You start to listen to these classes and you'll just think, oh, that person's disgusting.
Mm. Yeah.
How dare she say those things?
Hmm.
So then we move into the level of what I call the wise soul. And the wise soul is completely self-aware and self-responsible. That's that soul that now understands the difference between victim consciousness and higher consciousness, and it becomes self-observant. You know, in Buddhism, I talk about that a lot
Yeah.
to become mindful.
Yes.
Right. It's about being mindful of what you're thinking, being mindful what you're doing and why you're doing it, the motivations behind it. And don't just go an inch deep, go and foot deep, go deep into yourself to find out what your hidden motivations are and your hidden reasoning is and so forth. So the wise soul becomes really caught up in that and understanding that as you become a wise soul, you're moving into higher consciousness. You're thinking about it. And higher consciousness is all about becoming close to God, right? It's about having a closer walk with
Mm.
God. That's the way the Christians would call it. And I totally resonate and vibrate with that because that's been my prayer for 30 years. I want a closer walk with you. I want to know you more. I want to know when I'm really screwing up. I need you to put teachers in front of me that can help me evolve to a higher level of thinking and feeling, right? Why? Because I want to become closer
Mhm.
and more real. So, when I talked about the chakras, um, the ultimate things that the 12th chakra is your God self, right?
Mhm.
Your God self who's omniscient, who's all loving, who's all powerful. I want to become close to you. I want to have a closer walk with you. And in order to do that, you have to become real. You have to communicate with your higher self,
Mhm.
be nurtured by your soul, and then you get to go even higher.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that when you're at that level, the higher self and the soul, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, you're working with what the Christians would call the Christ self,
Mhm.
right? Who's all loving and kind and knowledgeable and powerful to the extent that we can be in
Mhm.
during the human experience.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that you're always going to be right, that you always make the correct choices. That it does not mean that at all. Lazarus says that um, we're going to act on what we understand to be right in this moment.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean in the next moment you'll understand that was the wrong thing to do,
Mhm.
right? Because you've evolved in
Yeah.
your perceptions, you've moved higher and
Yeah.
can see more. And so you can't judge yourself on this journey either,
Mhm. Yeah.
because we're constantly evolving. We're constantly changing our perspective,
Yeah.
seeing through a different lens.
Yeah. That's been a big thing for me is not being hard on myself. I think that's the biggest thing because that limits you too.
Yeah.
Um, you may think that, oh no, I'm just being very disciplined, but you're kind of holding yourself back if you constantly think that, oh, why did you do that? You're doing that wrong. You shouldn't do that. You know,
Hmm.
it can become very discouraging.
Yeah, it is very discouraging, and it stagnates the soul.
Hmm. Yeah.
You have to, life is a learning experience, and as a learning experience, we learn by making mistakes. So it's always going to be happening.
Yeah. Yeah. We're never gonna not make mistakes.
That's right. And if you hold yourself accountable for every mistake you make, and flagellate yourself emotionally and mentally, then that's really counterproductive.
Yeah.
You do need to feel remorse, especially if you hurt someone.
Mhm.
But you also need to tell yourself, I did the best I could with the consciousness I had, and I need to move on.
Mhm. Yeah.
make amends if I need to, and move on.
Yeah. And there's a balance between feeling bad about something versus victim consciousness where you feel like feeling too bad about something.
Hmm.
You can get mad at yourself to an extent, but if it's to the point where, you're calling yourself stupid or, oh, like you're like kind of internally yelling at yourself, that can
Right.
be really bad.
Hmm. Right. And that's kind of the dark law thing.
Mhm.
I'm stupid. I'm no good. I never do anything right. I'll never be happy. I'm a failure at living life. And I know that very well because I did it for years.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this thing I want to read about the wise soul. So the wise soul understands that the egoic mind has created the man-made world with its false paradigm that leads us astray, creating a lot of negative impact on everyone and everything around them. They also realize that they themselves are still part of that domain, which makes them self-aware and self-reflective as they look for their own hidden motives and agendas in everything that they think, feel, say, and do. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Okay. This also gives them the ability to look beyond the illusion and to see that there is something greater and grander that is beyond the surface of things. As they begin to glimpse the implicate order within the chaos, they begin to understand the grand scope and nature of creation. Having incarnated into a world of chaos, they understand that literally everyone is doing the best they can within the maturity level they've got, including themselves. Being an illusion that passes away with death, they are not attached to this life as anything other than a learning experience that has allowed them to live the journey of conscious awakening and to feel its effects in their own bodies so that they can fully understand its consequences.
Mm.
I mean, that's huge, really,
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
This leaves them in awe of the creation and in awe of each and every human being who comes here to partake in the heroic human journey of conscious evolution. Finally, at one with their own soul, they realize that all for one and one for all is the truest statement that has ever been made, and that each individual must come to its own awareness of this truth in their own right time and own right way before they too can get off the wheel of karma and go home.
Mm.
With nothing to judge or condemn in themselves or anyone else, they relax into peace as they make their ascension into higher consciousness.
Mm.
When you look at life in this way, you stop judging.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everyone's on their own journey.
Everyone's on their own journey. We don't wake up in the morning and think I'm going to do a terrible thing today or I'm going to live the worst life possible.
Yeah.
We wake up every day thinking we're going to be fine. We're doing it all right.
Hmm.
At your maturity level, what right is different than what right is at a higher maturity level.
Yeah. There's no definition of right or wrong.
Well, there's no ultimate
Yeah.
definition
Yeah.
of
I mean,
what
everyone
right
has
or
their own
wrong.
idea of what right and wrong is.
Exactly. They also see the bigger picture of creation without losing sight of the current picture. So we're all on this evolutionary journey. And then we go through World War II,
Mm.
kill millions of Jews, and as well as thousands of soldiers and bystanders and you know
Mhm.
all this. We create this horrendous human experience that traumatizes people for generations, for lifetimes to come, right? And we understand at a higher level that we're doing the best we can with the consciousness we've got
Mhm.
at the time. If we could have done better, we would have, but we couldn't do better. We understand the bigger picture of creation and begin to see how people are manipulated into believing certain things that
Mhm.
aren't true because they can't separate the truth from the lies. They
Mhm.
can't see they can't see the lies. So they get manipulated into it. They've been taken advantage of. And so they understand that everybody's forgivable, but they also don't discount the human experience,
Mhm.
which is incredible pain, incredible trauma that rewires your brain for the rest of your life,
Mhm.
causing you to have PTSD and, all of these
Yeah.
kinds of things that are changes the chemistry of your brain, changes the trajectory of your life. Maybe you're never able to get over those traumas. Lots of people from World War II were never able to get over those traumas.
Yeah.
The human suffering is immense.
Mhm. One thing that you go through in this lifetime can affect your entire lifetimes until you reach a mature, soul level that you don't have to keep returning back.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And humans are so vulnerable because it does affect the way our brain chemistry works.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever, have you ever known anyone with PTSD?
Um, Maybe in small, I mean, I haven't known any like World War II veterans, but for example, like rape victims,
Mhm,
after that they don't like to be touched, or they're very, they constantly think that something bad is going to happen to them every time they
mhm.
get close with, if it was a male, then they're terrified, they could be terrified of men after that.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and they'll become I mean, people with PTSD become vigilant, they're always suspicious, they're always looking for the danger. You create that kind of resonance and vibration, because you got that mindset, it's like, "I'm really unsafe here." Then
Mhm.
guess what? That's what you attract,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you create an unsafe life. I mean, I don't know how it is where you live, but in the town I live in, and I'm always seeing these old Vietnam veterans standing on the street corners asking for a handout, and so many Vietnam veterans that became alcoholic and just dived deep into drug addiction, and they just were never able to get over those horrendous experiences they had. Things that, I mean, I see a little bit of it just from the TV, and I don't like to even watch a violent movie, and they become so violent now. It's like, because then I have those images in my mind,
Mhm.
and even though they only may only have emotional impact for a few days after I watch the movie, I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah, imagine going through that for years of your life and you're in it physically. I mean, you probably won't ever be able to get over that.
Yeah, a lot of people were never able to get over that. And if you don't have, of course, the Vietnam War was a time when we were really clueless. People were traumatized in World War II, obviously, and they called that shell shock.
Mhm.
And the same thing happened in the Vietnam War. But nobody knew what to do to help these people.
Yeah.
They all came back from Vietnam. They were all drug addicted and alcoholics.
Yeah.
They terrorized their loved ones, their wives and their children, and did horrendous things. And then there's all this shame from that. But anyway,
Mhm.
yeah, hard, hard, hard lessons that we create for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that is this class for today, the maturity level of the soul. And next week, I'm going to talk about what's called the seven faces of the soul, which is also a really interesting class that most people don't know anything about, and most people really enjoy learning about. And I would like to invite the audience, if you have questions, to write your questions in the comments below, or if you have comments, and then Yvette and I will try to answer them as we see them. And the more that you can participate with us in this information, the better it is for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, so, anyway, I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. So we will see you next week with another video and continue our lesson on today.
All right. All
Okay.
right. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching.